think there is still an ethical aspect of intent. And if you remember when we were at that summit, like there was a question from someone about the ethical aspect of if someone used AI to do something bad, is it the responsibility of the model builder or the user?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say like it's very similar to guns.
Yeah, it's the user, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Quentin, Rule, this is Talk Lab, and we're going to get into some deep stuff here with your AI background. But I thought what was really interesting to kick it off with is you put a post on your LinkedIn page about I believe it was the stages of grief after being laid off from an AI position. And you had been there 14 years working on projects. You did your PhD in AI and some really deep engineering. What I really want to get at is how does that as an indicator for our marketplace? What I think it means is that no one knows where we're headed here. And everyone's trying to figure out, business leaders, you just can't hire somebody in AI and solve the problem, which is I think why you're reflecting on this. But you dug deep, and I want to just talk about some of those things that how helped you grow.
I think like firstly, what we have to think about like the career around AI is that there was less pressure in the enterprise setting up until November 2022 when ChatGPT and OpenAI models came out.
Right.
Where before that, companies were willing to invest in proof of concept and trying to get things and not necessarily have a goal on the return of investment on day one.
Right.
With generative AI, and when you saw like some competitors of ours like spending billions of dollars to buy startups that were overvalued by a large amount of money.
Yeah.
But that put a lot of pressure on businesses and enterprise across domain and across industries to really wake up and see what is my strategy?
Right.
How do I go about it? And for a lot of them has been, what is the true value that you get from it?
Right.
So I think that has been like really a big pressure on a lot of business and enterprise to go through. From a personal perspective, I think, when you've been in a long-term relationship, be it like romantic or being with work, it's always the same.
Right.
You have a sense of loss, especially when you have invested a lot of time. 14 years is not a small amount of time spent as a company. And I had the opportunity over time to spearhead a lot of the activities around AI. So it was a bit surprising to me at the time of being laid off when we were kind of like saying, yeah, we need to invest in AI and we need to move down to that direction. So really that led to really started thinking about, well, what have I lost, right. Number one, and how do I do it better, and what have I learned from it? And really what I think, having been laid off for 2 months now, is really trying to look at the positive. I had since COVID, like a lot of people working from home, a very unhealthy work-life balance in as much as I would wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I would put my kids to the bus for school, and then I would go to my desk and start working. Mm-hmm. They would come back from school, I would take care of them for a while, and then it was 8 o'clock, they were in bed, and I would go back and work, and I would work until midnight pretty much every day.
Right.
And you really lose that sense of boundaries between what is work and what is life. And, and a lot of things not only impact your mental health, but other part of your health. So really take a step back from that and look at it. Well, yeah, should I really have contributed as much? Yes, I should, but should I have done it in a different way that right. would have still enabled me to think about my health and my family, relationship at first. So that was definitely a big one. But then when I look at it, since I left, And based on the connection that I've made over that period of time, often by chance, like we met at that summit here in Aurora, and I would not be here if it wasn't for that. Similarly, I have been invited as a mentor for startups with the 1871 Innovation Incubation Lab.
Right.
I would not have had the opportunity to do that if I had not been networking. And I also got invited to help with a think tank around responsible AI and how you teach to companies how to do responsible AI in its application. So when I look back at that, I'm like, wow, yeah, great. I also had the opportunity to write blogs that if you work for a large corporation, I wouldn't say it's necessarily frowned upon to have your own certain belief, but it's always kind of looked at, well, how is what you're saying impacting what I'm really doing as a company, or what IP are you telling people about what we're working on that we don't really want you to tell about? Right.
Quentin, that's hugely insightful. I think mainly because you're laying out the condition that we find ourselves in, which is, I think I heard it said that there'll never be another large company. Like from this day forward, we're not going to see, Google-sized companies or Apple or AI or Facebook-sized companies were the two examples that I heard. And the reason is because 80% of the people working there, the owners don't know who those 80% is that they don't need. And I think Elon came in and he cleaned house at X, and he proved that. And what I mean by that is that AI is going to allow much more potent enterprise builds with smaller teams. And it's not just an effective AI, but it's also a desire of humanity to have, the ability to grow as a person. And you've had, and it. I mean, you've had 2 months to, yes, it hurts because it is like a breakup. Mm-hmm. I've lost a job before, and I understand how that feels. Or even just using a personal relationship, those are hard things. But when you have the freedom again to think, mm-hmm. there's nothing like that, right? And so there's going to be a lot more business startups, a lot more people that can independently use their expertise. And I think I've pointed that out, but you're going to do well in this industry if you're an AI engineer as things settle. I know the sky is up for you. And then also if you are an AI Xer, which is just an expert in a field and you understand critical thinking, those two groups are going to do pretty well. But they're going to be the employers. And you're going to have small teams that know how to exercise these tools. The bigger question is, are we going to act the same as the large corporations that we see downsizing because of the governance that they had over the economy, over our lives? And we've talked about this. I'll just go there because I think it's a big one. But talking about school, education, right? We know that they're in a different time than we are in the moment with AI learning, right? With the idea that you don't have to go to a library anymore, Not that people are reading less, they're listening more, they're experiencing content in different ways. So the idea of how do we build this? I guess that's my question is, what future do you see as it relates to people and their families and to society at large?
I think it's a very open-ended question, and a question very difficult to answer because there is a lot of different aspect to it. Mm-hmm. I was reading recently about the differences across countries. Mm-hmm. So if you take the US, which is a very legal-oriented kind of setting. If you take the EU, was probably some of the most stringent regulation and legislation around AI, around data privacy, and all of that kind of things. And then you compare that to China, mm-hmm. where they can do everything they want and at any point they want. Recently, there has been a new video model that came, Kling, it's called. Yeah. And we're trying like to see, or we're starting to see some IP leaking in, like pictures of Batman or things like that. But they don't really care because their thinking is put something to the market and we will deal with the legislation after that.
Right.
In the US, it's totally different. There is a recent legislation in Tennessee. It's called the Elvis Act. It's about cloning people's voice and images without their consent. And there, what they're saying is that if someone is using your software to create a song, for example, that uses the voice of a famous singer, even if you're not, it was not your intent, even if you're not aware of that,
right,
you could still be liable for it, and you could still have the Tennessee government shutting you down. So that will have an impact on what you can do, because now you have a world where you are very much spending time on making sure that your data is clean from a training perspective, so that you don't get into trouble. Compared like to other places where that's not the problem. OpenAI and Microsoft have kind of gone around that problem by saying that if there is any litigation against them, they will take care of it. But you can do whatever you want with their model, even if it's through your application of the model that the lawsuit came out. So it's kind of like weird from that perspective, like in terms of what you can do. So that's definitely going like to be one aspect. I think like from the other aspect of, in terms of knowledge and needed, yes, you won't need as big a team as what you had before.
Right.
If you take like software engineering, for example, I use LLMs every day for things that I don't really like doing when it comes to software engineering, coding, like unit tests. Why should I spend like time writing unit tests when, yes, it's got value. It makes sure that I have something that can go out, not have like a lot of bugs, but I spend a lot of time there as opposed like to where the creativity aspect is, which is creating an app that really reflect what my customers are looking for. So I think there you are going like to be able like to create things faster. I think there is still an ethical aspect of intent. And if you remember when we were at that summit, like there was a question from someone about the ethical aspect of if someone uses AI to do something bad, is it the responsibility of the model builder or the user? Well, I would say like it's very similar to guns.
Yeah, it's the user,
yeah. So I think there, because of the lack of legislation, people are still kind of like in that limbo. What can I do? What can I not do? What is going like to be ethical or not ethical? And I mentioned earlier, I'm participating with 1871 in that startup cohort. And some of the things that I have seen of people saying, I'm going to use AI and it's going to be cool. And then you start looking down a bit and you're like, but really, do you see that potential use of it? Even though it was not your intent, there is an ethical question open with using AI to do what you're saying, because someone, or what you're building, because someone could look at it and say, to go back to your example of the 80%, like that person has not attended enough meetings this week, or that person has not sent enough email, but you're not evaluating the quality of the meeting. You're not evaluating the quality of the email sent. I could write one email that is more valuable than someone writing 10 emails. But if you just go and look at the quantity, now you have created a profile of someone and say, oh, you're not efficient enough and therefore I need to let you go.
Yeah, those are the big ethical questions.